Evening at the Movies is a proud member of the I Did Not Make These Rankings podcast network. Other shows in the network include Mass Debaters, The Sip List, Crushgasm, Love is Black, Men Are the Prize, Crime Rewind, and Literature Reapers. You can find out all about our shows and more at idnmtrpodcastnetwork.com. Happy listening. You are now entering the world of a movie review. A world full of drama, joy, ridicule, movie spoilers, unpopular opinions, and adult humor for as far as the eye can see. Welcome to An Evening at the Movies.
Hello, everybody. Greetings and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I guess it's the butt crack of dawn for me, but other places in the world, it's a respectable hour. But I digress. It is movie time, and as everybody knows, this is your movie review podcast where we eat the stale popcorn, we drink the watered down sodas, and we talk about all of our favorite movies and why we love them. But today, it is a very, very incredibly special day because, well, we're about 3 weeks late, but we are here to celebrate the 30th anniversary of one of the greatest movies of all time. But before I get into that, though, we are joined by a very special guest making her An Evening at the Movies debut with us for the first time. Hopefully not the last time. So we will see how much fun she has and how much willingness she has to come back and join us again. But I feel like she's got good movie taste, so there's a pretty good shot that this will not be the last time you see her on the show. So, welcome to the show, Jen.
Well, hello. Yeah, I think I rattled off like 10 movies like on the top of my head, and I was like, and you're like, uh-huh.
Well, I mean, the audience
Yeah.
knows that I'm a big, huge movie whore. So, you know, even if you had rattled off something that I didn't particularly care for, I still would have said, because
Yeah, because all movies are worth talking about in some way,
yeah,
right?
I mean, we've talked about bad movies on the show before, and I'm not gonna name any names in particular. Rubber, just for you, Kevin. But no, we've talked about some bad movies. I mean, Rubber, Lawnmower Man. One of mine and Amanda's friends, Chansey, is notorious for requesting bad '80s B horror movies. So we've done some of those as well.
Yeah, and all of those mostly have a cult following too, which is great because
Oh, they
everybody's
really
still
do.
talking about it. Yeah.
So, but yeah. So the fact that you have a wealth of very great movies that you've already discussed, the fact that you want to come on and talk about is exciting to me. So
Yeah, it is. It is fun because if you're not hanging out with your friends, like I don't have a lot of friends with the same movie tastes, like in physical realm. My sister and we always nerd out on the same movies, but we don't live in the same city anymore. But you have those little quote alongs where only you and your friends or siblings or whoever knows exactly what you're saying at any given moment. You'll burst out into a quote, right?
oh yeah,
So it's the
you
best.
literally should have seen myself and Amanda last night prepping for well, technically this episode will release after the episode that we prepped for last night, but we were prepping for the 40th anniversary episode of Ghostbusters last night.
Yeah, that's fun.
And it literally was, we're watching, because she's, if I remember correctly, right down-ish the road from you in Fort Worth.
Right, that is down the road, very much down the road.
But she's your neck of the woods.
Yes, absolutely.
So, but we were watching together on Peacock because we've got PhDs in syncing up our TVs
Yeah.
through text message and just talking the whole time back and forth. But yeah, it was our Facebook Messenger chat window last night was like voice clip after voice clip after voice clip after voice clip because there's just like with this movie we're going to talk about
Yeah.
today, you and I, Ghostbusters is so freaking quotable. I mean, I posted on my Facebook feed last night. I'm like, I have no idea how we're going to do this recording and not have it be a line by line recital from the whole movie because it's like every time you turn around, there's something quotable and funny being said.
It's true. It's very true.
So, would you like to let the listeners know a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Sure, I can do that. Woo! Hello, I'm Jen. I'm with Weirdo Weddings Photography. I'm an artist and a wedding photographer, and I'm obviously out here in the podcasting world as well, just getting out there and being nerdy about all the things that I nerd out about. And I'm a movie person. I've always been that way. I grew up in the original Star Trek series with my dad. My dad was always watching them. And I just love the idea of like storytelling, science fiction, costuming. Sorry, it's really, really great inspiration for costuming and ideas for visual kinds of things. But I've always been a movie person since as far back as I can remember, and especially like watching it so many times that your parents get tired of it, kind of a thing. I think if I was to do what movie had I watched the most, it would be Return of the Jedi, because I was obviously I was born in the late 70s, but in the 80s I was going nonstop to the dollar theater to see, and I'm going to say this clearly, the original non-crapped version of Return of the Jedi. I don't like the new versions at all. I want the originals back, digital format. So
are you insinuating you're not a big fan of the special editions?
The ones that they came out where they changed everything, when they came out with 1, 2, and 3 and then inserted Anakin Skywalker at the end of Return of the Jedi, I just can't. Like, that's not my childhood. My childhood was, the old man in the, shows up at the end.
Well,
And
for those of you that don't, I mean, they did the special editions for those, and the old man stuck around for a while because they still hadn't cast Hayden Christensen yet to play Anakin.
Yep.
So not only did they do a special edition for all 3 movies, but then they had to go back and do a re-special edition where they added Hayden in at the end.
When he just started adding stuff into the original Star Wars, I was like, okay, I know you wanted to go play with your old movie and add stuff, but I kind of liked it how it was.
Well, there's aspects of the special edition movies, and for people that have been here for the last 3.5 years know, Star Wars is like one of my 3 favorite movies of all time. But I mean, there's aspects of the special edition movies that I can kind of sort of understand and get behind.
Oh yeah.
Like the enhancement to like Cloud City in Empire Strikes Back, where there's a lot more like windows looking out into the vast sky of the whole that makes it seem a little bit more real and not a lot less, monotone.
Yeah. More dimensions to it.
But yeah, I mean, there was no reason to go back and change.
Yeah, I didn't need to see. Jabba the Hutt walking was very strange to me. I thought he was more ominous in his palace. Honestly, as a kid watching this, mind you, I was like, oh, why is everybody so afraid of him? He's just sitting there. But when you add in that cartoonish, him swinging around, I was like, could have done without that. But anyway, I digress. Like it's one of those things, like when you grow up with something and they change it, even if slightly, you feel like they're changing your childhood memory just a little bit. So
which
yes,
is
the
a lot
yeah.
of the reason why I'm not a huge fan of the reboot 30-year later sequel culture that we're going through right now in
Yeah.
Hollywood.
Trying to retell a story in a fresh, modern way, um, it doesn't always work.
No.
And I think a lot of us get tired of the, rehashing culture. I know that many movies have been done several times. Um, and I hope I'm in that generation of I hope to show my daughter originals before I show her like a modern version. Because I as a young
Yeah.
person, I did like going back and seeing, oh, what was the original that, or what was the original that, and I would go all the way back and see which version I liked the best.
My oldest nephew is actually smart that way because like his favorite movie of all time, and again this has been discussed before on the show so the listeners know,
Yeah.
but he's a huge dinosaur nerd. So he loves all of the Jurassic Park slash World movies.
Mm-hmm.
But I have seen kids his age nowadays that are all, oh, Jurassic World, Jurassic World, Jurassic World. But honestly, Nico could care less. It could be any one of the Jurassic World movies. It could be any one of the three Jurassic Park movies. He doesn't care as long as it's Jurassic something. He is down to sit there and watch it over and over and over and over and
I love
over.
it. Not all of us can say that. That's great.
No, I will say this though, and I have apologized numerous times for this, but I fully understand my mom's pain when I my brother and I were kids. We used to watch the same movies over and over and over again. And being an uncle now, I understand exactly what she went through because
Mm-hmm.
there's times where that's all he wants to watch is Jurassic Park, and it's like there's other movies in the world that you can watch, child, not just dinosaurs.
Then you got the music running through your head all the time.
Uh-huh.
Ah,
So
which was funny, because I know the movie the Crow came out in May of what 94, right? And they
yep.
only showed it for the 2 days for the 30th anniversary, and I was able to sneak in last week and get there and do a matinee. And part of me was like, I don't remember. I hadn't seen it in a while, so I was like, part of me remembers it's a little choppy sometimes. Part of me remembers I loved the music. If you don't watch it all the time, you sometimes do forget the details you do love in a movie. Which
Uh-huh.
is why I'm glad I went to see it in the theater. And I thought to myself, I was like, oh my God, like I probably haven't seen this in the theater since it came out because I owned
Yeah.
the VHS or I owned a digital version of it somewhere. Um, the CD, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So
Oh no, I have the VHS, I have the DVD, I have the Blu-ray, I have every version of the movie that I could possibly own because, again, as listeners know, my number one favorite movie of all time.
and I saw your tattoo, which really solidified the commitment to you loving that movie, I think, right? Like it's like I
Yes.
have tattoos, but I haven't really until I'm a Blue Man Group fan of about 28 years. And I just now got like a little tattoo for the Blue Man Group. Just a little one that's signifies signifies the community that I love and the things that I love about Blue Man. And but for the Crow, as an artist in college and going from high school to college, I was always drawing the details of the visuals on the covers of that,
Mhm.
right? I did a whole pen drawing of just the Crow from I think it was the CD cover. I'll have to dig out my VHS to see if I'm pretty sure I still have the VHS of the Crow. But yeah, I mean, I just remember doing this art. It was a really, kind of like a different thing I've ever been exposed to before. And I was like, and I was in that time of, uh, I feel like the 90s was an interesting time. If we had a little bit of the grunge, you had a little bit of that vibe happening. And so when The Crow came out, I was like, wow, this is fantastic. It's so dark and it's cool. I like it.
Especially the early portion of the 90s when this movie came out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, nothing against the mid to late 90s at all, because the 90s was the 90s no matter how you look at it. But you look at the fact that it was what, late, probably 89, 90 when a little band from Aberdeen, Washington, named Nirvana broke out into the world and forever changed the music landscape as we know it.
Yeah, that was my whole high school was like what bands were big at the time. And I think that's why I liked the movie so much because it was using the music of my generation in that
Yeah,
period of time, right? I mean, I had like I had Alanis Morissette, I had Bush, I had uh Stone Temple Pilots, all of that. I had all of that and somewhere in my um if I wasn't listening to it, my friends were, right? It's like,
yeah,
if I didn't own it, they did. And I was always exposed to their music. And, depending on, I moved a lot. So like a couple of my high schools, one really liked like AC/DC more. And then the other high school liked Metallica more. So it was like, I was exposed to all these ranges of music. So when The Crow came out, I was like, oh, well, I've heard some of this. I'd never like really because I was born and lived in the 80s, but I didn't listen to all the 80s music. So when I heard the Cure song, I was like, wow, I really like that. And I especially loved his transition in the movie for that because I just watched it last week. I was like, the angst and the pain is still there, and it reminded me that every time he touched something, he was flooded with emotion, not just memories, but emotion attached with those memories. And so
yeah.
everybody he touched, everything he touched, it was like, and
Therein lies the beauty of this movie, though, because it's
yeah,
so psychological
yes,
and visceral, and like there's so much to take away from this movie
yeah.
that I mean, I can understand why it still may not be everyone's cup of tea, and I don't shame people for not necessarily fan boy girling out for the movie. I mean, inside I'm probably shaking my inner head, you know, what the fuck, but I digress. But it's it speaks to the era that it was released in, like we were saying though. I mean, that movie is very much hardcore what our generation was going through, you know, internally, emotionally. We had a lot of those feelings and darkness inside of us, and the emotions and all of that. And I'm not going to lie, Chef's Kiss, that soundtrack is probably one of my top two favorite soundtracks of all time.
And like I was saying,
Maybe.
that if I could give one critique, it would be make the songs a little bit longer in the movie because that's kind of where I was telling you earlier it was like a little choppy. It's because when they transition to the next thing, it's really choppy. It's like, okay, you get this much of the song and then you're on to the next. And I'm like, oh, but I want to hear more. That's really my only critique.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's just because I wanted more, right? And
Yeah.
in every song, as most cinematographers and filmmakers will tell you, like if the song and the motion going with the song doesn't make sense, the movie doesn't work as good as it could. But for this movie, I felt like every song and every moment went together very well,
Yeah.
including when they start The Cure and he's like painting his face. I forget the lyrics, but it's like, he was
Yeah.
painting his face, right? And I was like, how cool is that? And that little kind of tweet of a bird and the sound of that song where that there's a crow, there's a flying
Yeah.
around and he's putting on the makeup and he's punching the mirror and he's having his transitional moment where he's putting on the clothing, and then the pivotal impactful scene for me watching it in the theater for the first time is his transition with the lightning flash, and just bam, you see him ready to go take on whatever he's going to do. And I'm getting chills just talking about that right now, because that's just, again, where we were in this time of our lives. It was very pivotal for me. I was about to graduate high school. I was only 17. So now everybody knows our ages, right? We're talking about the 30 years.
Okay.
So
same age, because
yeah,
this movie literally came out the May of my junior year in high school. So I was 17 at the time.
yeah, and I turned 18 after I graduated, so I was like the younger person in my class. And then I went to college later that fall, and that movie, like you, stuck with me into the rest of the year, because I took that with me into college, and I was drawing it and I was expressing it, and dissecting it, whatever you want to call it. And I would put it in my dorm room. I would hang it on my door, because that, when you go into a dorm room, like, you can't really use tacks, you use that sticky putty stuff. So I was tacking my art on the wall, but I was also tacking my art on my door. So I had my own little creative space, right? That's my safe haven. I'm studying for school, but then I'm coming back and I have my little, art expression. And that was one of them that I took with me to college. So, and of course, I don't know, everybody's grown up at different places, but in where I was, it was a place called Hastings store, and you would go in there and you'd get CDs, DVDs, movies, VHSs. You could either rent them or buy them. It was kind of like a bookstore, but it was more movie and music based too. So in a college town with a college job, using college money to get stuff like that, movies, music, everything. But yeah, it was like this perfect pivotal time where I was learning about just even my fashion expression. Like I got like Payless Shoe Source combat boots at the time. I was like, I loved the look so much. I wanted to have a little bit of it in my closet.
Well, I mean, I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, so I get the whole 90s fashion vibe a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, I mean, combat boots, flannel shirts,
Yeah.
that is a huge part of, what we wore. But then when it became the thing in the 90s, it's like, it naturally becomes, you know, part of the lexicon of what you wear on a daily basis. So good times.
Yeah. It's still good times, because here I am last year. So it says 29 years later, did my first cosplay since college and did the full makeup. And I was like, I don't know what it was about last year. I said, why can't I? There is no rule that says, well, once you're past 40, you can't do any cosplays about something you loved in college.
Why the
So
hell can't you?
I did it. I did it last year. I did it 3 times, actually. I bought a full outfit as best I could. I feel like I mixed Sarah's look, which with the shredded fishnets, her little chunky shoes, and a skirt. I used a skirt that I was comfortable in. And then the top half was more Eric Draven. It was more like duct tape, shirts, holes, and an interesting jacket I got off of Amazon that made me feel like I could walk the part, not just like be in a black leotard like in the 90s, because I didn't have anything in the 90s. I borrowed somebody's makeup, did the best I could, and then last year I was like, I have more knowledge. I have more ideas, and I
I
just
think that
ended up,
was the
yeah.
beautiful part of the 90s was the fact that you didn't necessarily have to have the perfect piece of fashion in your closet.
Mm-hmm.
You could, you know, be over at a friend's house and be, hey, that looks comfortable. Okay. They throw it at you, you put it on.
It's very true. Very true. And yeah, there wasn't anything. wild about my college years, except for just learning to express myself and find who I was, and that was the perfect time to really dig into movies and music and all the things that I'd already
Yeah.
been enjoying for my whole childhood. So, but yeah, like that.
And there was so
That
much
was it was something.
greatness that came out in the 90s.
Yeah, there were so many things like so many different things that were inspiring in the 90s, and I still go back. My husband makes fun of me all the time about watching old movies, and I was like, yeah, but if they're really well done and the story it lights you up or it makes you laugh, like why not watch it 50 plus times or 100 because
Yeah.
it's well done. Or if even if it's what not well done, you're just very entertained by it. Why wouldn't you watch it several dozen times?
It's like this movie.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is a good movie for it's almost therapeutic to watch because you're watching somebody else go through their own almost like I'm going to say this, it's almost like his own therapy. I know it's revenge, I know it's other things, but knowing that he's only alive for a certain amount of time to do a job that he's been brought back to do, right? And
Hmm.
he can't be released until he does it. And I think that's again when he touches everything and sees people. And the thing I had forgotten about the movie is the pain that he had held on to from the cop, and that he using that as a
30
weapon
hours of 30 hours of pain all at
all
once,
for you.
all for
And
you.
again, chills again. That
Spoiler
was
alert.
yeah, spoiler alert if you haven't seen this 30 years ago. Um that was very it was just I hadn't seen it in so long that I was like, "Oh my god, I forgot how he defeated that guy," because it looked like he was
Hmm.
about to be taken down, and I was like, "Wait, he's got more. He's got more." And I was like, he's like, "What you had in here saved me," and I was
Yeah.
like,
Well,
"Wow."
because if you remember correctly, like, um, yeah, what's his face's sister had the whole idea that if you kill the crow, you kill the
Yes.
man,
Yes.
and they shot the damn bird
Yep.
at the beginning of that final battle, and the bird was dying, which obviously she was right because with the
There was a
bird dying,
connection. Yep.
that connection was being severed, and Eric was starting to lose his freaking powers throughout
Yep.
that final battle. So he was getting his ass whipped by
Very much.
top dollar on the roof of that damn church.
Yep.
So it was that last little fleeting moment of connection that he had only with Ernie Hudson's character that,
Yeah.
you know, literally what you had in here saved me. So if he hadn't been there and gone through that whole,
Yeah.
30
Yeah.
30 hours of hoping that
Yep.
she'd come out of it and give him something to work with and go after these guys for, then, the end of that movie could have been totally freaking different.
It really would have been different. And I don't know if
Well,
you
it
got it.
probably wouldn't have been writing wise because they
Yeah.
still probably would have
They would
written
have
in
figured something
some,
out.
but it wouldn't have flowed as harmoniously as that ending did. I mean, I've heard people say it was kind of hokey, but at the same time, it's like, is it really though?
Nope. Made
I
total
mean,
made total sense to me.
I'm exactly
Made
it
total
could
sense.
it
Because
could
it's
have
a
been
it's a
something they just wrote together, like, oh, he just miraculously comes back out of nowhere and
yes.
stabs him in the throat or whatever they decide as the dynamic kill motion is going to be, and that's the end of the movie. No, it it's more, it's deeper, it's something more, and I think that therein lies the beauty of the whole. Because I've seen a lot of interviews from right before
Yeah.
the death happened, where Brandon's talking about the fact that it's deeper than just a violent movie. It's still a very visceral and violent movie, but there's a psychological, emotional depth to that character that, you know, causes him to feel, incredibly justified and, playing it the way he has to play it to make it such a believable character.
Yeah. And much like his initial transformation, he transforms throughout the whole movie. And it's kind of like when you watch a movie and all of a sudden their wardrobe's different. You're like, so every time you see him, he's almost got another piece of wardrobe. Or one time he just took off his jacket because he'd been shot and stabbed so much or whatever. And I'm like, it's interesting to see where he started and where he ended in even just the clothing aspect. I thought that was interesting. And I thought the emotional journey that we are all taking with him. And then, and when we talk about deeper too, he originally was just probably brought back for those people that, killed him and Shelley, right? But because it went deeper, that's how he ended up. And the lady's like, well, I want that power, so I'm going to take the bird and blah, blah, blah. And then, then the guy comes up to him on the roof and says, actually, I'm the one that ordered the da 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 for that to happen. And he said, well, I'm real sorry about that. And I'm like, you're not sorry, but that's a really cool apology.
It's a very cold-hearted,
yeah.
apology. Like,
he's like, well, I'm really sorry
because
about that. And I'm
you
like,
get the whole
no,
thing.
you're not.
I'm really sorry. Yeah, it's like you can say you're sorry, but ain't nobody in the world believes that you're sorry. So don't play that card with me, motherfucker.
Especially when he was gloating in front of everybody that he wanted anarchy and, mayhem, and it wasn't just about setting fires anymore. So the fact that almost like a bonus cherry on the top moment where he got to finalize that character and just be like, okay, you're out of here too. So I thought that was kind of like a really nice way for him to start transitioning for his job to be done. I just thought that was a beautiful escalation kind of to the storyline. And Sarah. So many things happening with Sarah in this one too.
Well, yeah, and really quick before we transition over to Sarah, but I mean, you get the idea of him being like the mob boss, crime boss, whatever he is throughout the entire movie. But you also throughout the entire movie get the sense that Eric's just back to seek revenge on what the people did to him, being Fun Boy, Tintin, Skank,
T-Bird. Yep.
T-Bird.
Just the four.
Yeah. But then you kind of have that moment at the end where everything's unraveling. He's, for lack of a better term, going home.
Yeah.
And Sarah calls out for help, but then it's like you kind of sort of get the whole, he's back for revenge, but yet you still have this here. He's technically, you built all this revenge, but then you have this, you get the sense that Top Dollar is the one that probably ordered the hit, but it's never explicitly said until he says, I'm the one that cleared that building. Sorry, but not sorry.
Yeah, because I remember by this time he's completely annihilated the boardroom, and everybody's running around, and and he did more than I'm sure he thought he was signing up for, just because he'd taken out that guy's top guys, and so yeah, and transitioning to when it comes to Sarah, what a smart kid, but she had to be, and
because it was just her.
The dynamic of her mom being pretty much, we'll call it absent parenting.
Well, yeah, because until you have that one scene the next morning where she wakes up after listening to the record and her mom's in the kitchen making eggs for her.
Yeah.
She's like, I don't even like eggs.
Yeah.
And her mom's all like, fuck it, I give up.
I never was good at this mom thing anyway.
Yeah.
And you
can't help but feel for her though, because
no, absolutely.
A lot of us in some way, shape, or form went through part of that growing up when we did.
And I think that's why I think it's Sarah's part in this is very important to the story because we already know that she spent a lot of time with Eric and Shelley. A lot of time, it looks like.
Well,
She was heavily
because they
in.
don't have time to unfold all of that because of
Yeah.
the way everything has to unfold.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they did a really good job of giving us just enough of what we needed to
All the
understand the character.
flashbacks we needed, we knew she was heavily involved in their lives and they loved her and she loved them. And, and
I
she's,
mean, even
yeah,
right there in that first scene when she shows up at the apartment slash crime scene
yeah,
and they're loading Shelley into the back of the ambulance,
yeah,
and Ernie's all like, "So, your sister,
yeah.
she's gonna be okay," and he's like, "That's not my sister, but you know,
She
thanks for
takes care
caring
of
anyway."
me. She takes care of me
She takes
sometimes.
care of me, you know. And in a way, she and Eric are like her mom and dad.
Yeah, it
You
was
know,
a safe environment for Sarah where you could see her laughing and smiling and all the
she's happy.
flashbacks. Yeah, she's very happy. Um, and because we know her home life was rough. We don't have to know the whole story because they give us so much and just those little clips that we know that she's independent, but
Mm,
she really has a love for these two people, and so when they get killed, it's hard on her because then she's like, well, what does she have left? Even a year later, we don't see necessarily what she has happened that whole year since they were gone,
yeah.
but we do know that her home life is just it's not that great. And so I imagine with that, of course, no, I do love the fact that she's made friends with the cop, right? So she's made friends with the cop. He's buying her a hot dog. I thought that was adorably sweet, that they had a relationship. So you could tell that she was just really street smart. And I appreciated that about her character. But I know it had to be hard to know that your friends passed away and they were gone. And not just that, but they were murdered. And
Well, because that again was one of the things that I remember hearing Brandon talk about in one of his
yeah.
last interviews was the fact that therein lies the very real part of creating this character because coming back, like nobody has ever come back from the dead.
Hmm.
So we don't know how that would go. So you're basically free to do whatever you want as an actor, but you also have that element of you have to remember that the people that you love have had a year to
Hmm.
grieve and move on.
Hmm.
So therein lies the dynamic of the beauty of his relationship with Sarah is the fact that he's come back to do what he has to do, but yet whether it's a can't or he doesn't want to
Yeah.
reveal himself to her
Yeah.
and totally disrupt all the healing that she's gone through in the last year.
Yeah.
But then to have that, it to me, it's probably one of the most emotional moments in the entire movie when she realizes who it was that grabbed her off the skateboard and saved her that night, and then she shows up at the loft because
She's like, I
she
know it's you.
she needs to see him. She's like,
Yeah.
and she's having that talk with nobody, but he's there.
The camera work on that was so cute because like she's just so
Yeah,
little, and then they're doing this little zoomy thing. I miss you,
yeah.
and she's like about to walk away. Screw
And she's like,
you.
literally have that moment. Screw you! I thought you cared.
Yes,
And
yes, and then
and
he
he's
just
like,
appears, and
dude,
I'm like, ah,
because he doesn't even really explain it verbally to it just, but you
yeah,
get that whole literally, I do care. And she has
yeah,
that moment where she's like, oh my god, and she just runs over and just wraps her arms around him and just collapses into his embrace.
yeah. And that was such a sweet scene because the the viewpoint of her leaving and then the illumination of the shadow and the light right behind her, like he has now appeared.
It just kind of
I
sort of grew
loved,
and fell right over the
loved,
top of her.
loved that moment because, you know, she was like, okay, I'm just going to get out of here. This place is whatever. And I'm just going to, whatever, maybe I was seeing things. And then when he said, it's me, I'm here. And I'm just like, oh my God, that's amazing. And so just to know that he let that moment happen, and knowing that if so much is going on in his world at that moment, that he was able to just connect with her for a few. And the fact that he also connects with the cop in a unique way too. Like, I don't want to go, we don't have to go there yet, but I loved the
Oh
connections
no,
that he
I'm
oddly
fully
made.
ready.
So if you're ready to go into Ernie Hudson, because I love these two dual connections he's got going on, because when I got back from the showing last week, I was in the Frightmare group, and it's a Frightmare's a big horror convention here.
Mhm.
And I said, "Did anybody go see it?" You know, da da da. And somebody had written, "We forgot how funny it was," and I was like, "I know, right? I had
That
forgotten all these
scene
little
in the whole scene in the apartment, literally from him standing there in his underwear, having a cigarette with his hat on still. Are
That
you a
was so
ghost? Boo.
good. Boo.
To the, to him, Eric taking the cigarette and taking a drag off.
He's
You
like,
shouldn't
kill
smoke
ya.
these. They'll kill you. But yet you
Oh,
get past all of that
yeah,
humor,
yeah,
but there's still some very real emotional stuff that gets covered in that. Like the whole one of, you know, like I said, that scene with Sarah and Eric is probably one of my favorite scenes of the entire movie.
yeah,
But yet, one of my probably favorite lines of the whole movie that I always took away as a life lesson is when Eric looks at um, Ernie Hudson and he's like, little things used to mean so much to Shelley. I used to
oh,
think they were kind of trivial. Believe me, nothing is trivial. It's that whole, because until you really experience an ultimate loss like that, you don't realize just how important those little moments are to, you know, your being as a human being. Like,
yeah,
even back then, this is still probably 5 years before I lost my grandpa, um, who was, in fact, my best friend at the time. Like, we were like inseparable. But, it didn't take long after his death to realize just how much I miss, having those times where I could go over to his house and sit down and um, listen to the stories and whatnot that he would tell from when he was growing up as a kid, and just all that little stuff that, you know, I remember a lot of the stories, but at the same time, it's like when you don't have that available to you at the drop of a dime, it's like you miss the little stuff like that. And even, 25 years later, it's still something that, you know, I wish I could have back, because those moments with him were so deeply a part of who I am. So, you know, there is all of that too. So,
yeah. And in that same scene, he's like, he's asking about the woman in the picture, and he's like, well, I'm getting a divorce, and he's like, and he says that kind of stuff, and you're like, it makes you think about, you know, did his life also get? We also know his life got rearranged anyway, but
mhm.
like we don't know his end story if he reconciled, right? But the fact that he had, Eric Draven standing in his room telling him that he misses those things about Shelley, and the fact that they didn't even get married. They had a relationship and they were about to get married. And I hope, in my hopes, that the cop thought about that and did go ahead and reach out to potentially reconcile. But I love the fact that that came up because it does have, it has a lot, so much to do with grief and loss, and how we all process it differently. And some things we don't even realize are grief and loss, that we're wondering why we're sad about something, or why something is painful. And I love the fact that he kept catching him at the most interesting moments because he was out there doing the work that he was there to do, which just so
Yeah.
happened to coincide with him doing his police work. um,
Yeah. Like
so
the first moment of probably them connecting after he blows up the pawn shop
yeah,
and Ernie Hudson shows up and he's all like, "Don't move," and he's like,
he's like,
"I thought
I
the
thought you
cops
said
said freeze,"
freeze.
and he's all like, "Well, I'm the cops and I say don't move. So if I say don't move, you don't move or you're
Moving, you're
dead." And he's
dead.
like, "I
I
say
am
I'm dead
dead and I
and I move."
move.
You know, it.
Oh man.
I mean, this is all a part of so many of the reasons why I love this movie so much. Um,
You also
and the
add in the
fact
fact that he grabbed a guitar and we see him playing music on the roof at another time. That's,
that
it,
that
it's so
one
cool.
little brief guitar
Yes. Like
moment
this
of
much.
music, I mean it's not much, but that little brief moment of music,
Yeah.
there is so much emotion and turmoil and angst all encompassed into that guitar solo.
It was a shout from the
It,
rooftops of,
literally, and it's like so insanely amazing and beautiful. It's like it fits so well. It's like whoever put this soundtrack together knew exactly what they were freaking doing, because the recorded stuff like Stone Temple Pilots, Cure, all of that fits very perfectly into the movie, like we said. But
yeah.
even like the stuff like, you know, this that moment that we're talking about on the rooftop where Eric's playing the music fits so well into the story as well, that it's like, I mean, they could have totally ruined it, and it could have just been him sitting up on the roof with an acoustic guitar, strumming away
Yeah.
on some country song.
And I think we
It,
know that that wouldn't have worked. It wouldn't have been
no, it wouldn't.
powerful. It
That
wouldn't have made a
electric
statement.
guitar, the screamy, angsty, it's like, yeah, it's like it fits, and it's towards the end of his time back on Earth too.
Yeah.
So it's like he's going through all of this, and you have the one side of his emotion with the "I miss Shelley." You have still the anger of, I think Skank was the only one left that he hadn't killed yet
Yeah.
at that point. So it's like he's still going through everything. He just had probably, I believe, his moment with revealing himself to Sarah and the sit down, heart to heart, where, you know, he takes the 30 hours of pain from, you know,
Yeah.
Ernie Hudson. But, you know, again, therein lies the beauty of how this movie was put together and orchestrated. It's
Yeah.
like one bit, for lack of a better term, it's like Alex Proya, or however you pronounce his last name, the director, had a blank canvas in front of him at the beginning of the movie, and everybody, him, Brandon, Ernie, everybody just took turns painting this big, beautiful masterpiece. I'm probably speaking overly dramatic about it because I love this movie so much, but it just feels like it's just a very well painted, beautiful picture that gets created over, what, an hour and 41 minutes.
Yeah. And just when you think you're
So
done, there's like a little bit more to go. Like another little thing shows up, and you're like, "Oh, so this is what's happening next." All right. And
and then
what
when
I was
it is
gonna,
officially done, then it needs to be done, and there needs to be no City of Angels or
yeah,
Salvation or
yeah, whatever
Pennywise
else.
reboots. Spoiler alert:
Okay.
Kasey does not
Spoiler
like
alert.
those sequels and reboots.
Spoiler alert, I don't either. Matter of fact, I don't even recall if I ever saw any of them, and if I did, I probably didn't make it very far.
I've
Um,
seen everything one time.
eh, again, it's been so long that I was like, I don't even feel the need to revisit. Now, recently I was at Frightmare. I wanted to revisit all the Scream movies. Well, that's a legitimate go back and binge kind of a series, but I can't say I would ever binge the Crow movies because it doesn't work. If it doesn't work for me. But what I
To
did
me,
last week,
I've always said, to me, this movie is it. It
yeah,
starts, it ends. There
and it's
needs to
done.
be nothing else after. I mean, obviously, it's you can't have that continuation of a story because Brandon's not there. And even if you tried to do a continuation with that character, it doesn't work because Brandon's
Yeah.
not there.
Well, that and he did in the storyline, it comes to a close. There was no need to resurrect him again in
No,
that story.
no, there wasn't.
It's like the story is, beginning, middle, done. And yeah, so
There,
can are we allowed to speak on the new one to a point?
oh, well, I mean, I've seen the trailer.
I've seen the trailer.
I
It lacks everything we've been talking about. It lacks any dimension at all. There's no
well,
dimension
no,
to
and
it for me.
even to the same point that, like, okay, I remember seeing scenes in the trailer where he's like sitting in an apartment in the daylight, and it's like that literally has no part in the world that all of these people tried to create 30 years ago.
I think you're very right because there was more night. There was mostly night, right? Like I feel like I can't think of one daytime scene right now. Like everything was happening at
Very
night.
briefly, that breakfast scene with Sarah and her mom was about
Oh,
all you
yeah,
got.
okay, that was yeah, you're right.
If
That's the
if there
one
was
time. Yep.
if there was stuff that happened during the daytime or during the morning, it was indoors where it was dark, and the darkness is a main character in this movie.
You're correct on that. Yeah.
It
Now that
and it
thinking about it.
truly needs to be.
It was supposed to be. Yeah. I think it
I
was
mean,
probably intentional.
well, and again, harking back to one of his final interviews, that was one of the things that Brandon brought up was the fact that the dark works well, but then you look at like the warm red and oranges and whatnot colors that you get in the flashbacks. It
Yeah.
helps to delineate the two worlds and separate them from each other, so you're not left sitting there wondering, is it the real world or is that a flashback?
I appreciate that when they do that too. It's easier to tell. Well,
Well,
that and he,
sometimes it is just easier to tell, period. But
yeah.
if you did like this entire movie in one monochromatic color scheme,
Mhm.
it would be fairly. It could be very hard to understand. Okay, well, wait. Now, did Shelley come back from the dead, or what's going on here?
Yeah.
So I 100% appreciate that.
Yeah. Um, so when I saw it last week, they played a little bit of some behind the scenes briefly with the director and a little bit, a tiny bit of Brandon, not enough to appease my wants and needs at that moment, but they allowed a few minutes of some really cool BTS that I hadn't seen, or it's been a while since I've seen it. And I really appreciated, I love hearing how they do behind the scenes and talk about how they put something together and adapting it from a graphic novel-esque thing into this other world and this cinematic world. And I adored their loft. I loved everything about their little loft. And
It had a very gothic feel to it.
Well, the windows, I was obsessed with the windows. I was like, I was just looking at it again because no matter if it was clean or dirty, I would still want to photograph it. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, as a photographer, I would want to be in that space and go create. You know, so like, well, Shelly and Eric probably would have been one of my couples. They were getting married on Halloween, you know?
Who gets married on Halloween?
I almost actually, I think I did talk back to the screen. I was the only one laughing in the whole theater. I was like, there's a whole bunch of people in that theater, maybe 8 to 10 people, right? And I was like, I can't hear anybody else laughing or making little jokes or anything. And it made me think like maybe they've never seen the movie. Like I saw some young folks walk in, but then I was like, yeah, but how would they know to find out about this movie? I barely found out about it. Like I barely found out it was going to be released in theaters. Somebody sent it to me.
It wasn't very well publicized.
No, and it was very, very limited release.
Yeah, well, and some of the advertising for it didn't go out, I don't think, until like the beginning of May.
Correct.
And it was like the last weekend of May. It's like, damn it, it's his 30th anniversary. Give it its fucking due, damn it.
Full circle moment was when it was my high school best friend that messaged me. She's like, hey, you know, we should go see this. And I was like, I remember driving to North Texas from Oklahoma to go to the big movie theater. Mm-hmm. And that's where we would see all these movies like, you know, Hook or this movie or Jerry Maguire. I mean, we were seeing all these movies of this time in our lives in this theater, small town theater. I'll call it small town theater. But so all these movies I was seeing was definitely like, you know, my friends were seeing them too. We were all seeing them together at some point, you know. It's pretty cool that she's the one that messaged me to let me know about it. And I was like, oh, well, I got to get in on this. Oh, it's only 2 days? What am I going to do? It's only the 29th and 30th? Jeez.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, last week we had so much power go out here. So it was kind of like we were living this, you know, post-storm tornado mixture of weather. And then wouldn't you know, our power came on right as I literally moved us back into our house the day I had to go see the movie. And I was like, well, wouldn't you believe that all this stuff that's been happening, all the tornadoes, all the emotional turmoil, and I'm going to see The Crow. It's too fitting. It's too wonderful. So I was like, yay, I'm going to have this.
I saw all the videos that Amanda sent me of everything that North Texas was going through the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And well, it's storm season for you guys too, so.
Well, this is for me, it's weird. Normally this kind of weather's more like April. This is like June. We should be boiling hot by now. It's very interesting.
Yeah. I've said it before, but I'll say it again because, you know, it was probably one of my most favorite vacations of all time. But almost 2 years ago, I think, I spent I jumped on an airplane and came down and spent 4 or 5 days with Amanda and a couple of our friends, and I flew into Oklahoma City. And, you know, obviously not the Dallas-Fort Worth area, but yeah, even in Oklahoma City, you know, stepping off the plane, walking through the airport, and then walking out the door to go get in the car, it's like, bam! And this is end of September. You hit that wall of freaking heat.
Oh my gosh. And it does not, it's like as soon as October 1 hits, so like, oh yeah, I think I'll take a chill pill now. But when I do.
It did too, literally, because it was like the last week of September.
Yeah. It's boiling hot.
Like, it was, for lack of a better term, it was beautifully hot, and it was everything I expected it to be. Mm-hmm. But you still can't ever until you experience it, you don't know,
Mm-hmm.
because that hot in Texas, Oklahoma is not Washington hot. And
Mm-mm.
I've grown up in Washington my entire life, so
So
apples and oranges.
that's why you'll see so many of us out here, if it's kind of like when you go up to the north in the extreme winters, it's boiling hot inside and then super cold outside. Well, here, sometimes the air conditioner is so frigid inside that, you have to take a hoodie inside. I get cold inside, depending on how intense the air conditioning is, which I'm grateful for. But the other day, I'm going to walk around with my shirt around my neck because I know I got to put it on when I go in anyway. It's not a full hoodie, but it was like a long sleeve shirt.
Oh,
And sure enough, 2 feet away from the freezer, and I'm like, all right, put on the shirt. But yeah, it's like I always have a hoodie somewhere near me because if I go to a restaurant for a really long time, I'm gonna get cold. So,
yeah.
like in my own home, I've got tank tops. And I'm like, woohoo! When I'm out and about, I'm like, it's not always the case. So,
So,
yeah,
oh, holy wow. Um, so for lack of time, evidently, because this hour went by really, really,
really
really quick.
quickly, we hit some good points.
We did hit a lot of good points, but before we wrap up the episode, um, I want to give each of us a chance to give uh, a review, sum up our thoughts on the movie,
Yeah.
and then rate the movie on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being hot garbage. And if you give this movie a 1, I will rescind my open invitation for you to come back. Just saying. And 5 being the correct rating for the movie. But as obviously polite manners go, ladies first.
All right, all right. So, quite obviously, I'm going to give this like a 6.5. I'm going to go off the scale completely because I think and this is for everybody to really enjoy this, but when movies really strike you heart deep in the soul and you take it with you, and 30 years later you can still look at that and say that changed my life, or that was a pivotal time in my life, and I love and adore these kinds of movies and stories that do that for you. This movie does that for me, and so I can't not give it a high rating because I know exactly where I was, who I was, and I was going along with Eric on his journey of the hard pieces that he had to work through and all the emotional things that I didn't understand back then. But when it's shown to you and you can actually see somebody going through something, you learn so much. And I think that, we all have the opportunity to learn when we're watching a movie. Even if it's not our story, we can still learn. So that's kind of what I loved about The Crow. I loved the aesthetic about it. I loved how dark it was. And it hit a lot of dark things. So you got to be prepared for that. If you've never seen this movie, you got to be prepared for those dark things. But I felt like everything that Eric walked through was a justified moment that made the story work. I loved everything about Brandon's look. I loved everything about how they adapted it to what I could see. I love Ernie Hudson in this. I love the character Sarah. Sarah has been through some stuff, and I think we should give her a little bit more of a louder hand clap for the work that she put into this movie, because this little girl's been through a lot. And like we were saying earlier, that moment where she kind of reconvenes with her mother, and her mother's had a wake up moment, and it was a really powerful one. If you have not seen the movie, I won't spoil it for you, but it's a very wonderful, powerful wake up moment for her mom, to where that reconnection is why I always feel like we have the opportunity to connect and reconnect. And sometimes you do not need to connect with other people in your life, but The Crow for me gives me that connection to myself 30 years ago. And I think that's what's great about it. And so, yeah, 6.5 and plus, plus, plus. So, yeah. And then eventually maybe I might do the cosplay again this year. But I did Weird Barbie meets The Crow, and it was really, really funny in a good way, because I'm giving honor to it. I'm not making fun of it. And that's the difference. I'm not some mime walking around. And matter of fact, when somebody would say that I was a mime, I was like, I'm not a mime. I'm the crow. What's wrong with you? Have you not seen the movie?
Exactly. I mean,
So,
technically, the crow is a mime, but
but I'm not a mime when I'm dressing up. I'm dressing up as Eric Draven from The Crow. And so, like, it was
yeah.
just funny to me that I had the 3 people recognize me last year at Frightmare as The Crow. So that made me happy because I put my heart and soul into it. And I felt like the fulfillment that came with that, like, it's just this wonderful, nice, mushy feeling inside your heart. So, anyway, that's my review.
So, um, if Jen would be so willing, I think, and she gives us her permission, I would actually like to post a picture. 'Cause I believe you sent me a picture of the Barbie crow.
Yeah.
So, if it's okay with you, maybe I could post that in the Facebook group along with the episode when we drop the episode.
That sounds great. Yeah, I just did it the other day. I did a video on it, just because I needed to talk about it quickly after I saw the movie.
Mhm.
And because, as you know, we connect with characters throughout our lifetime in some of these movies, and Weird Barbie was one of those for me, and so was The Crow. And I was like, well, why don't I just put them together and be ridiculous about it? And I loved it. So
See,
yeah,
that's the
I'll
beauty of artist
yep.
artistic creativity.
Yep. And I'll send you one that definitely shows the makeup too. I didn't do the full face makeup. I just did the eyeliners and all that stuff. I didn't have time. I was like, I don't have time for the full white face paint with the powder.
No, I've done that before. I did it. Ooh, God, I think it was Halloween, and when I was trying to grow my hair out,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Brandon's, but all I could come up with was the cheesy ass fucking mullet. But I did the whole, grease paint, white with the black and the everything. I don't know if I have the picture anymore, but it might be out there floating around somewhere.
I had to dig mine out
But
of the archives because, back then I had 24 pictures on a roll, and it just so happened I took a photo with a guy in the dorm room, was a boyfriend of one of the ladies. And he was doing The Crow also for Halloween that year. And mind
yeah,
you, this is Halloween 94. And so I'm standing there with him. I look like a mime and he looks like legit. Like, I'm just
yeah.
but you know what? You do with what you got. And I did. I did exactly what I had. I had long curly hair at the time. Did not have pink hair back then, but you can clearly see that I put some effort into it, and I was super happy to cosplay that. It was fun.
So, I mean, for many of the listeners and the loyal people that have been here for 200 and some odd episodes of An Evening at the Movies, you guys will know that this is the fourth time I think we've talked about the movie.
Oh.
So, that's how much I love the movie. So, I
Well,
mean,
and
I'll
I'm
talk.
sure all of us have had different things to say too. It's like different
Oh,
and same
absolutely.
things.
We
Yeah.
we've regurgitated the same stuff a couple of times, but each one of the episodes has been very vastly different discussions.
Love
So
it.
therein lies the beauty of why I have the revisit rule on the show,
Yeah.
where I'll revisit any movie that we've done because your thoughts on this movie may not be the same as, Tim, who was my first guest on the very first episode when we talked about it. That episode and this episode, vastly different episodes. I love
Yeah.
I love that first episode to death because it's our first episode.
Yeah.
But I go back and look at like the quality, just quality alone for this episode to that episode, apples and oranges. But that also comes with 3 years of experience doing this every week, sometimes
Well, I'm
two or
so
three times
glad
a
that
week.
you let me revisit this with you because the timing was just too good. And I did
Mhm.
not realize that was your first episode. And I also didn't realize you had that enormously amazing tattoo. So, and we didn't even talk
Spoiler
about,
alert. I
yeah,
will be
those little,
sharing that tattoo also in the group the week that this episode
yay.
drops as well. Because,
Yeah.
well, as everybody knows, well, not everybody knows, but it's on my back. And generally, I'm wearing a full on t shirt. So,
Mm-hmm.
for the most part, it doesn't necessarily get seen enough. But for the amount of money I spent for that damn tattoo, it needs to be seen more. So,
Well, I'm telling you, like, that's the one part that I sat there and I just watched it unfold. I mean, the Firebird is literally, that was a piece of the movie another piece, like, just all the good pieces of this movie, visually
yeah,
stunning. Just loved that part. That whole part
exactly.
was great. Yeah.
So,
What's your review?
my review, um, this is my number one favorite movie of all time.
Yeah.
It Number two is a very close number two behind this one, only for the pure fact that it is one of the first two movies I believe I saw in the movie theater, and that was,
Mm,
and I can't necessarily put A New Hope as being my number one favorite because it's not the best one of that trilogy, but um, Star Wars for me is close behind The Crow, only because, like I said, it's that first movie that I saw as a kid, one of those first movies I saw as a kid.
aw.
But this movie resonated for me in a way that Star Wars never could.
Yeah.
And on top of it, the fact that the mysteriousness of everything that happened in that last week of filming
Mm-hmm.
with Brandon's death, and um, on top of it, doing more research, the fact that the guilt and everything that Michael Massey went through
Yeah.
because he was the actor that was holding the gun that ultimately took Brandon from us, and all of that. And there's just so much to learn about this movie, and to me that type of stuff is fascinating. Like
Yeah.
when I was with um, Amanda and her husband for that week, like one of the things I had to do while I was in Fort Worth was they took me downtown to Dallas so I could go see Dealey Plaza where President Kennedy was assassinated,
Mm-hmm.
because that type of dark, creepy stuff is it fascinates me. So the mysteriousness of the Brandon Bruce Lee curse is kind of sort of something that I've always been intrigued by.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but there is definitely an inherent beauty to this movie and the messages that everybody thoroughly conveys to the audience throughout the entire from start to finish. It's an amazing movie. The acting is great, the directing is great, the cinematography is great, the music, like I said, the soundtrack is probably one of my top two or three favorite soundtracks of all time.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't give it anything less than I'm I went perfect the last time, and the last couple times I went 5 out of 5, but I'm going to mirror you and I'm going to go 6.5 out of 5 because
Yeah, because this kind of stuff, you can't put it in a system. It doesn't work. Like, it's beyond the system.
exactly. And when a movie resonates with you, like this movie clearly resonated with me, you know, it is something that you have to hold on to, and you have to cherish, and you have to pay tribute to all the time. And I'm comfortable in saying this is probably not the last time we will ever be discussing this movie on An Evening at the Movies, and I hope it's not, because this movie deserves all the credit in the world. So definitely 6.5 out of 5.
Yay.
So this was
And
definitely a fun episode, and
yay.
100%. We had talked about it in the opening, but you are more than welcome to come back anytime you want to come back and discuss movies with us. Maybe even next time I'll be able to have the whole hosting team with us for the episode.
Oh yeah, like I was like, should I sneak in on the Ghostbusters? But I know that's going to be a terribly popular one.
Yeah, it will be, but at the same time, it'll be a great episode as well.
It'll be awesome. Yep.
We definitely look forward to having you back.
Yeah.
As always, I can't wrap up an episode without thanking, our loyal listeners for being here each and every week. You guys are insanely amazing, and the fact that we recorded Josh's birthday episode and did Fast and the Furious yesterday, and it was live. We had probably the most people watching that episode live that we've ever had before.
That's
so great. Definitely 100% thank you to the listeners for being there and watching with us and having fun. I will work on my technical issues so that hopefully next time everybody can watch and comment along, because I know there was comments that didn't get posted in the episode. So I will figure out what the hell I did wrong. So hopefully we can all enjoy live episodes again in the very, very near future, because we've got some great stuff coming up in the next few weeks. For those of you who haven't necessarily listened, we do have Ghostbusters episode that just got released, on June 8th, but we're also following that up with Candyman and Short Circuit as well.
Short Circuit.
I love that movie.
It's so cute.
As well, with Ghostbusters turning 40 years old just recently, finger quote, but also as well, there's another classic comedy that's also turning 40 years old this year that we will be talking about, but not necessarily talking about that movie as directly, but we'll be talking about the new movie that's coming out July 3rd. So it'll probably be the week after, but we're going to talk about Beverly Hills Cop 4. So I am personally excited for that. As of last night, I officially posted on the Facebook group. We are at 30 days and counting, because I'm excited to see what they've come up with for that. And it's probably the one 30-year later sequel that I'm excited to see. So we will be talking about that in July. And then also we've got everybody's favorite original member of the Dozens, Brandy, requested 3 Men and a Baby. So that'll be coming up in July as well. So, but everybody knows the rule. If you're a fan of movies and you've got a movie that you would like for us to discuss, you are more than welcome to request the movie, and we will gladly put it on the schedule and talk about it. And even more so, if you want to step out of your comfort zone and you want to come on an evening at the movies and discuss the movie with us, you are more than welcome as well. All guests are welcome. We just have to find a way to fit it into my work schedule as well. So definitely, this was a lot of fun. I look forward to many, many, many more episodes with Jen, because she's just as big a movie fan as I am.
I have so many that I love that I could go on forever.
Well, I mean, there is a little movie coming out in September as well that
just a little one.
I'm kind of excited for. I'm pretty sure you know which one I'm talking about.
I think I've decided to have my birthday party centered around that coming out. Not necessarily the date it's coming out, but I think I want to have my party with that theme and create images.
Pictures or it never happened.
Oh yeah, it's definitely. I'm setting it up for July. Y'all be ready.
So, but I can almost promise you the episode may not air in September because everybody knows September is Stephen King birthday bonanza.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody also knows that October is Halloween Horror Fest. So uh, Beetlejuice may be making a surprise appearance in October as well.
Very
So stay tuned for
nice.
that as well.
Very
So
nice.
definitely 100%. Jen, don't be a stranger. You are welcome to come back anytime you want. Um,
Thank you.
Everybody else, you guys are welcome to come back and listen each and every week because we're tuning out new episodes literally every Wednesday. Well, as of this release, it'll be back to every Wednesday. Um, we're probably going to take a week off after this recording, like next week. We probably won't have an episode, but then we're going to Short Circuit and Candyman double feature the week after. So just because I've only got a couple of days available for recording, but I'm kind of rambling. But I think on that note, definitely 100%. Thank you to everybody for being here. Thank you, Jen. I look forward
Thank you.
to creating some more amazing content with you.
I'm gonna start my list.
You, you better, because the more requests we get, the better the content is that we'll be producing.
Absolutely.
So,
Well, thank you again for having me. It was great to meet all y'all, and I hope you have a great day.
and at the end of the day, we hope everybody comes back for. Let me find my cursor. Where the hell did it go? Dead space in the air. There it is. Okay, we hope everybody comes back for an evening at the movies. Have a good week, guys. We'll see you next week.